So in case you didn't know, student loans get charged interest on a daily basis. So the longer it takes you to refinance your student loans, the more money you're going to be paying on interest. So let's go ahead and get onto this list of top companies that you can utilize to refinance your student loans. And the first company we're going to be talking about today is Earnest. Now, Earnest is actually a company my wife and I went through to refinance her student loans before paying them off. So we've had a little bit more experience with them, but these companies are all going to be great ones to go with, just depending on certain features and benefits that each one provides. Now, probably the most important thing when it comes to getting your student loans refinanced is, how much does it cost to refinance your student loans? Well, luckily for you, with Earnest, the cost is entirely zero. So it doesn't cost you anything but your time to refinance your student loans. You kind of see that as a trend through the rest of these different companies, because I'm not a fan of having to pay to refinance when possible. So not having to pay anything to refinance means you're going to save money in the front end, as well as saving a ton of money in the back end, because refinancing typically will save you money if you can lower that interest rate. Now, there's a couple other really important things that Earnest really does for you. And one of the things is that they don't charge you anything for early payments. Now, I know that sounds weird, but there are companies out there that will charge you to be able to pay extra on your student loans. And that means if you wanted to try to pay them off early, it's going to cost you money. And again, this is another really popular theme I have across the board with these companies I talk about today, because I'm really passionate about making sure that, one, it doesn't cost you anything or very little to refinance, or two, it doesn't cost you anything to pay extra on your student loans, because why would you even want to have to do that if you're trying to get them done early? So another feature that Earnest has is the ability to adjust your payment date. So this is a great feature for somebody who maybe all of a sudden has new bills that are coming up on the same day as your student loans, and it's making it really hard to budget properly. So you can actually move your date on different days of the month, so that way you can have everything adjusted accordingly and be able to manage your budget a little bit more efficiently. So the next feature that Earnest has is the ability to do bi-weekly payments, which I think is a really awesome feature. So if you're somebody who wants to pay a little extra onto their student loans, you can go this route. And as I mentioned earlier, they have no early penalties for paying early on your loans. Now, probably one of my favorite features about Earnest, and I've actually gotten a lot of great feedback from other people who have gone through the process from my recommendation, is that Earnest does a really great job of not just looking at your credit score, because that is important to make sure you have, a decent credit score when it comes to refinancing, but they also go through beyond just your credit score. So they look at other factors in your life that can really dictate how you are managing your money and if they are willing to refinance your student loans with them. So another thing you can do with Earnest and a lot of these other companies is actually be able to combine multiple loans into one. So if you have maybe 3 or 4 different loans all together, you can combine them into one and make it one easy payment, and not having to stress with all of these different monthly payments with student loans. So another great feature that Earnest has is the ability to skip one payment per year. Now, this of course is usually when something happens in your life where it's a big emergency and you need to focus on that part of your life more so than student loans and paying those off. So this is a great feature. Obviously, that month actually gets tacked onto the end of your overall loan. But again, this is something you can utilize in case of emergency. I probably wouldn't recommend doing it every year, as you want to actually try to pay off these loans as quickly as possible, but it's nice to know that the option is there for you when needed. So the next benefit that Earnest has is actually your disability and death benefit. Now, I know this might sound strange, but for federal student loans, if something were to happen to you, whether you became disabled or you died, your student loans for the most part can get wiped away. Now, with most other student loan refinance companies, this is not an option anymore, which can really deter somebody from refinancing their student loans. So with Earnest, you actually still get that benefit for the most part. Of course, you still have to apply if something happened to you as a disability, and or if you pass away, your family does have to put in a notice so that way they can wipe out that student loan debt. So the nice thing is they still offer this benefit, where a lot of other companies unfortunately don't offer this. So if that was something that was holding you back from refinancing, Earnest definitely has you covered. And then another thing with Earnest is that they do offer 0.25% discount if you do auto pay, which I know doesn't sound like the most in the world, but that is still extra money that you're saving from having to pay interest on your loans. So it's always a great option to go that route. Now, if you are interested in checking out Earnest and seeing if you can refinance with them, I'll have a link in the show notes. You can check them out, as well as the other companies that I'm going to be talking about here in today's episode. All right, so next up on this list is going to be SoFi. Now, SoFi is a pretty popular one. This one a lot of people have heard of before. They do also offer $0 to refinance, and I think, again, that is a big deal because it doesn't cost you anything but just a little bit of your time to call or go online, which is probably the easiest thing to do. And then they also have a no early payment penalty, which is huge because, again, you don't want to be paying extra fees to be able to pay extra on your student loans. Now, another thing that they also do too is they are able to honor your 6-month grace period. And in case you don't know what that is pretty much the time between you actually graduating and having to start paying on your loans. So if you're already already going through that grace period, they will actually go ahead and honor that for you, which not all other student loan companies do. So if you're still in the midst of that grace period, this might be a good option for you. Now, next up as well, they do have a minimum of $5,000 to be able to go through and refinance. So anything less than that, you unfortunately have to just kind of keep on your own. But at that point, you're really close to paying it all off, which congrats to you. Now, similar to Earnest, they do also have an auto pay discount. So that way, if you are also going through the process and making sure that it's paid on time automatically, you do get a saving. So the next benefit that SoFi has is unemployment protection. So if you lost your job, unfortunately, you can actually call them up and let them know, and then they will give you a kind of like a grace period there. So that way you can go ahead and look for another job and find something to get back on track and not have to worry about your student loan. So that's a great feature if that were to ever happen. So one downside when it comes to SoFi is if you have a cosigner sign with you for the refinance, unfortunately, they are not able to get removed from that, which is not always the biggest deal for some people, but just a heads up in case, somebody wants to help you out at the beginning but needs to be removed afterwards, is not possible with these SoFi loans. And then when it comes to SoFi, you do kind of want to have a 650 credit score or higher when it comes to going through and refinancing with them. If you don't know your credit score, I do highly recommend doing a research on top of that. I'll put some resources in the show notes. You guys can check those out as well to know what your credit score is, so you can definitely get approved before going through the full process. All right, so before we continue on with the rest of this list, if you are getting some value out of this content so far, do me a favor and hit that like button down below. Really helps me out to continue to provide free content just like this for you guys. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop back onto this list. All right, so the next company on this list is going to be Splash Financial. Now, just like everybody else, they have a zero fee when it comes to actually going through and refinancing your loans, which again is very important. They do have a minimum of $5,000 if you want to go ahead and get started with them as well. So just something to keep in mind. One important thing too is they do only do a soft pull on your credit if you want to get an idea if it's possible to refinance with them. So instead of having to worry about getting a hard pull on your credit report, which can hurt you just a little bit, they do a soft pull before going through and officially offering you a refinance, which is nice for some people so that way they can go through and verify their score. Now, I've actually talked to some of the employees at Splash Financial a little while back, and one of the great things that they told me is their story really began with helping people in the medical field when it comes to getting their loans refinanced to be able to help slow down the amount of interest that was building up on their loans. So they're actually great for people who have medical loans. Not that that's exclusively what they do, but they're really highly educated on helping those people that have a massive amount of debt. I'm talking about like hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. So if you're somebody like that, this might be a great option for you. But again, this can actually be for anybody, not just those with medical loans. Now, another thing with Splash Financial, you do have to make sure you have a good credit score around 650 and up, very similar to a lot of these other companies. So again, make sure you understand where your credit score is, and if you possibly need a cosigner, definitely something to consider. Now, similar to everybody else here, they have no penalty for early payments, which is a big deal to me because if you want to pay off these loans even quicker, you shouldn't have to pay a fee to be able to do that. Now, if in case you didn't have the best of credit scores and you did need somebody to co-sign with you, they actually do allow you to have your cosigner removed after a certain amount of time. So that way, in case that's something they wanted to do as far as a cosigner, have themselves removed, this is an option for you. Now, next up on this list is a company called CommonBound. Now, CommonBound, just like everybody else, again, zero cost to be able to refinance your loan, and they also have no early payment penalties, which is important. They do also do a soft pull on your credit. So if you're wanting to look and see what potential rates you can get, they do a soft pull, and then once you go through the remaining process, then of course they will do a regular pull on your full credit. Now, they do also allow you to refinance your Parent Plus loans, which is a pretty big deal for some people. So if you've ever in the past had a parent get a loan for you called the Parent Plus loan, you can actually refinance that back into your name if you're wanting to have that under you. So I know that's a big deal for some people. Now, CommonBound also offers forbearance up to 24 months. So this is in case you have to put on hold your student loans. Now, to get the full 24 months, you would have to go through a pretty rigorous process to make sure that you can, let them know that you're having a hard time finding a job, or in some other case where your life is kind of changing pretty dramatically. But overall, you can go up to 24 months. I believe for most people, it is a couple of months to a year on average. But the opportunity to have that available for you is a nice thing as well. And then with CommonBound, you can actually remove a cosigner after 36 months of on-time payments, which is quite a little bit of a time, but it does also allow you to remove them, so it might make them feel more comfortable to be able to go ahead and co-sign with you with the idea of being able to get removed. All right, so next up is going to be LendKey, and I'm pretty sure by now you know the theme of the first two options here, which is one, of course, $0 to refinance your student loans, and then two, no early payment penalties, which is a big deal for me. But next up, they have the flexible payment options. So you can actually adjust your payments based off of how much you're actually earning versus how much you want to pay down on the loan. So obviously, the faster you want to pay down your loans, the more you want to put into it. But maybe you don't have a big income just yet, and you can see that happening in the future. You can start off with smaller payments and then adjust it as you go through. Now, they also do a soft credit pool. So again, just like a lot of these companies, if you want to get an idea of what you can get for your rates, you can go ahead and check them out without having a full hard pull on your credit. So refinancing your student loans with LendKey actually allows you to do a forbearance up to 18 months, which is also a pretty big amount of time. Again, it would just be all based off of your circumstances and then, what they're allowed to give you, because it's not always going to be 18 months. But again, having that option there is a really nice thing. With LendKey, they can actually remove a cosigner after 12 months of on-time payments, which is probably the smallest amount of time to be able to remove somebody out of all of these student loan refinance companies. Now, I'm going to have a link to all these companies in the show notes down below, so make sure you check them out and see which one can save you thousands of dollars on interest. Now, once you do that and you want to learn how to actually pay down your student loans even faster, I want you to check out this video right over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.